Hello, welcome to the driveway garden. Today we're going to do something that I have never done here before. We're going to do a full garden tour, and we're sitting here right now on the west side of the garden. Specifically, you're right outside the west side of the house, an area that isn't actually the garden, looking into the beginning of the garden. This is the west path, and there's one really long garden bed from this point all the way to the back fence back there. So we're going to start by touring that. And on this path is in between that garden bed and a retaining wall here that keeps the path up from the driveway, essentially. So we're going to be walking along that path, and along the retaining wall we have containers, garden containers and pots growing. So we'll be looking at both this in-ground bed on the west side of the west path, and we'll be looking at the containers that are along this retaining wall as we go down this west path tour, the first part of our full garden tour. Okay, so come along and let's do this. Okay, well, we have a bunch of things like tucked into the corner here. Over here is a deck that overlooks the fence and overlooks that direction. And this deck here was built with a seating area for us before this house and our neighbor is there. Now, we love our neighbor. They've been great. It's fun to talk to, and when they have time, very busy, so we don't get to talk that often. But before our neighbors owned this house, which I think they've owned it maybe 7-8 years now, and we've been here for like 19 years. Before that, there was a really old house, and it was like sitting in a gully, and so the roof of that old house was almost below the fence line here. So from our deck, we could basically look out over the property, and then the whole block, several streets down, is sloped downwards. So we could look out over the property all the way into the kind of the West Hills area. It was, yeah, it was a good view that way. That's no longer the case, but what that means is a house was built right here on the other side of this fence here. But what that means, though, is that the landscaping here wasn't really set up to create more of a private garden in that way. And so I wanted to get some really, I realized I could have started this project 5 or 6 years ago, but I didn't. I just started a year and a half ago. And I realized, hey, I want to get some kind of vegetation, some kind of bushes that will grow really tall here that will give us a sense of privacy in this garden. Especially from the deck, give the deck a sense of privacy from the house next door. And so I got this green thuja giant, which you probably think it's crazy that I have it sitting in a pot and on top of a whiskey barrel. But the reason that I did that was to give it more height as quickly as possible. And I haven't really committed to where it'll live. I'll kind of move the whiskey barrel and just plant it in the ground as it grows a little bit more here. And then here we've got some jasmine, our jasmine, which is very popular and grown a lot in the Portland area. Love it. It smells terrific. Our neighbors have some too, and I can just smell it. They have a lot of it, and I can smell it wafting over from the neighbors on the other side. I can smell it wafting over, and it's lovely. So I love having this here, and it can be trained to grow quite high as well. So looking forward to how we can use these things to kind of create more of a screen. Then over here, what I have is called a tea olive. It's neither tea or olive. It's just a type of bush, and it's actually grown quite a bit since I planted it a year and a half ago in this pot. Again, I haven't committed to the location. I think this is the right location, so I might take it out of the pot and put it in the ground soon. It's growing quite vigorously, so I think that's working for me. And then the next one here is a wax leaf privet. So same thing, hasn't grown quite as tall yet, but it's bushed out quite a bit already from what it was, and has the potential to be kind of a nice privacy screen as well once we get that going. So kind of the entryway bushes, and then let me kind of reorient you and kind of aim you down and tell you a little bit more about the rest of what's going on over here on this side here. So giving you a wider view of this area here on this side, the planters that I have that are on the retaining wall here, and down there is the driveway and then the garage to the house there. And so this path goes all the way back through there. And so here what we have is got a lot of pansies and carnations here. The carnations have turned out to be perennial. I didn't plant most of these this year. They came back from prior year, and Yeah, they're lovely. There's a lot of foliage. I don't get a lot of flowers at any one time though. I'll get like 3 or 4 flowers scattered throughout, and they just kind of come and go throughout the whole season, it seems like. But maybe that's because they weren't mature plants yet, or maybe it has something to do with the way I'm growing them. I don't know, maybe we'll see something different this year. I see a lot of blooms on there, so maybe I'll see a big bouquet of carnations here now that I didn't have before, but it'll be interesting to see. Okay, what you'll see here, this is the seasonal bamboo trellis that I made. I don't expect this to last past this season. I buried it about this much of the stakes in the ground there. I'm thinking I might put some support stakes that go like this from there down to just the side of the wall here later if it looks like it's not holding up. I was using some jute twine to put this bamboo together, and what I've planted around it are some runner beans. So I've got the runner beans around it. Then I've got beets that have already been here that are kind of along the front here, and then an old kale from last year that I overwintered and that I'm just keeping going as long as it will survive. We'll see where that goes. As I continue on down this way, there's more beets in here, and then I've got some snapdragons here that overwintered. The branch broke on this one, so it's kind of flopping over there, but plant is really healthy there. This is kind of a cottage garden style. This whole bed here is a mix of veggies and flowers, and then over here it's all mostly just flowers until we get to some pots that I have some peppers in. As we come along this way, we've got a bunch of arugula here, and this arugula is actually now flowering. If you're not familiar with this, you can actually eat the arugula flowers, and I find them kind of tasty. They're the most flowers, a lot of the brassica flowers I'll eat, like the kale and the broccolis when they flower, and these arugula flowers, they'll have a little bit of sweetness to them because of the pollen, or the nectar, I should say, that's in the flower. But with an arugula flower in particular, there's still that spiciness of the arugula. So you get this like spicy, sweet, nuanced, but these flowers are small and delicate. This is a treat that really only gardeners can enjoy, right? There's not something you can really harvest and save. Maybe you might harvest some of the tops and throw it on a salad that night or something, but in general, I don't try to harvest this for anyone else. It's something that only I get to enjoy as being the gardener out here. And there's a few things in the garden that are like that. I would say I treat currant tomatoes mostly like that. Like I don't try to save them for other people. I grow them to eat in the garden. But yeah, the arugula is big and healthy here. It's probably needs to be actually harvested, or this is going to seed, right? So it is at its tail end. And when it's older like this, it's spicy, of course. Now, in these ice cream buckets, what I have is raspberries, 2 raspberry canes. One took, one didn't. This one is apparently dead, but this one did okay. And the reason that I put them in buckets was because it was an experiment. I was like, I wonder if a raspberry cane will grow. If I can get a raspberry plant going in an ice cream bucket like this, in a pot, if it were a similar size. The other point was that I wasn't ready to commit any bed space to raspberries. I had raspberries at the old garden. I had a big like 20-foot row of them, and they spread and they can start to take over things. And I certainly did not want a big chunk of this bed being taken over by raspberry canes. So that's why I put this in a pot here. And I don't personally actually like raspberries that much. Of all the berries, I mean, they're okay. I'll eat a bunch of them, but I much prefer strawberries and blueberries and blackberries to raspberries. But my 3-year-old daughter, she likes to have a little bit of all of it, right? So she was excited that we had some raspberries here. So this is enough for her to have fun with it. Over on this side, my theme of pansies and carnations continues. And we get in here and I have some cosmos hanging out in the back here. They're more freshly planted. I also have some penstemon kind of planted in there. That's a perennial that will shoot up a stalk with some flowers on it. Haven't done it yet. It's in its 2nd year, so we'll see if it ever gets there. But the plants have been growing nice and healthy over time, so hopefully it gets there. And that same theme just kind of continues up and through here. Over here, what you'll see starting right here, and then you'll see it kind of carried on as we go down the bed, is there's garlic just kind of spread out. So I didn't want to plant a bunch of garlic in one place. I don't have a ton of, my is kind of spread out. So I just took, you know, my, I don't know how many cloves I had in total, maybe 16-ish. And I just kind of spread them all the way out down there instead of putting them in one spot. So we've got garlic going on throughout there. And here is a newer plant of broccoli that's in here. On this trellis here, these trellises are fantastic. I didn't stop myself, I would get more, but you'll see in the garden I have tons of them ready. I have many of them, I should say, already. These were like 20 bucks at Costco, and I bought them a year ago, but I did see they had them at Costco this year. I don't know if they still have them, because about this time of year they start phasing out some of their spring gardening stuff. That may not be there anymore, but these are great, and I move them around different places as I want them for the garden. This is an old curtain rod, so I save kind of fancy old curtain rods from things that we've had going on in our lives as kind of garden posts. I think that they look nicer, they work cool that way. So on this trellis here, I have some more winter beans in there, and then on either side, I have on this side for sure, I have a kabocha squash. I had a really like baby one that I was trying to save. It had fallen out of its pot, so I stuck it in here. It's in there, but I'm not sure that it's gonna survive. It looks pretty weak and fragile in there. We're continuing to head down this side path. And so starting here, we've got our raspberries that I put in these decorated ice cream buckets. And then over here, we have a continuation of the pansies and the carnations. And then here, we've got one of several stands of overwintered straw flowers, these red and yellow. They really brighten up the garden. Almost looks like I had a design in mind, which I didn't. These just happen to be the ones that survived from last year. We've got several stands that kind of go down this way. Here is, I've taken to calling the soap flower because of it smells soapy and nice, and just lets off a really kind of fresh fragrance. The common name on the package is Loveliness. I believe I got these seeds from Botanical Interest. It's supposed to be a perennial. These actually are overwintered from last year. I've planted this all the way down here, but as you can see, this is where it's really blooming. The only place it's really blooming, even though I've got some of those plants farther down there, they're not blooming down there. Over here to the side that you can't see, but I'll give you a close-up of it, is a newer cabbage plant that I've put in there. And then we've got a newer broccoli here that has some caterpillar damage on it there. And then I've got an overwintered snapdragon here that the flowers, or the flowering stem, is looking rough because it got bent over. And I just propped this up or pressed it against a bamboo stake yesterday. So to get it off this part of the garden, so that I would have some more space to plant more stuff, because I need to get some summer squash or other brassicas in here. Looking forward to this. I'm hoping before it gets too hot, we will start to see it, but these are sweet peas. So that's not an edible pea, that is flower sweet peas. And it's growing. I mean, it's quite lush and vigorous in here on this trellis, but flowers as of yet. And then I've got a few more of the strawberry containers here, decorated buckets that have been used for strawberries. As we come over this way here, what's changed from back here to over here is I've got a few irises in here. Now, I've never actually grown irises to bloom yet. I've got these 3 bulbs in here. Of course, you can see they're vegetating. I haven't seen a blooming stalk from it yet though. So, and I don't to check the timing, because I'm not an iris grower. This is my first round on it. So I'm not sure if they should have bloomed already or should be blooming already, or if I'll get them later this year. But it may be that this is just kind of their year. They're going to collect energy, and maybe I'll get a bloom next year. And in the same pot, I still have some pansies. The other new thing that I have in the back here that's newer from where we were over there is I've got some cosmos here. So I've got these kind of red burgundy cosmos coming up here. One of the unique things that I have back here is these are actually French breakfast radish flowers. So I planted a few French breakfast radishes back in January, early February, because I had a space there. I was still kind of working over here. I didn't want to plant anything in the actual ground over here, and forgot about them. And then eventually they flowered. And I was like, wow, these white and pink flowers looked even better earlier. They're now actually going to seed, but the white and pink flowers were actually a nice addition to this look of this garden here. So I left them. I'm like, yeah, let's let them decorate the garden. And now they're going to seed. I'm leaving that because my 3-year-old Maddie was looking at it the other day and was curious what these were, and I was trying to explain to her that they were seeds, but while it has the seed pods, the seed inside hasn't fully developed. So I'm gonna let it develop so I can share with Maddie, hey, this is what happens. Remember, we were talking about the radish seed, and now there's a little seed inside once it fully forms. And then I'll pull them out and get rid of them. I don't really have a desire to save radish seed, but it just turned out to be an interesting piece of attention for my 3-year-old to learn a little bit about that. That's what we have going on here. Let's keep going down this way. Well, down here is the arugula here, and this is, probably most of you know that arugula is kind of a spicy green. It can be a little bit spicy, peppery. Hi, Maddie. You want to help us with the garden tour? I have here in this pot here are some petunias. They're not flowering yet, but they are doing well since I planted them. So I have confidence this will be a beautiful pot once it's ready to go. Okay, and then at the end here is one of many chard that I have in the garden. There's some massive leaf minor damage there. And I've got some of the loveliness along the front here, but as you'll see, they haven't flowered. And then the other thing that you can see here is you'll see some of that garlic that continues to be spread out throughout there. Maddie, do you like garlic? No, you don't like garlic. Oh, okay. All right, well, I'm gonna move us on this way and then we'll keep reviewing the west side here. Okay, as we come a little further down here, on this side, we've got more pansies, of course, and then we've got some Melba nasturtiums that overwintered from last year, or it reseeded. I'm not sure if nasturtiums do that, if the plant survives or if it just seeds. Can't see it here, but I'll show you a close-up because it's tucked in there, but I've got a little bowl of some thyme. You don't need that much thyme unless you're trying to farm it or you use it a lot, like every meal or something, but yeah, we don't use it that often, so it's just a nice little, one of those herbs nice to have in the garden, and then it's flowering right now. These are a perennial flower called 4 o'clocks, and given their own little pot here to see how they go in a container. And as we move this way, we've got an broccoli tree that I'm growing. It's a broccoli from last year. It's flowered profusely, and I've cut all the flowers back and just kind of keeping it going just for the fun of seeing kind of how long can I keep it going and what turn into, if anything, at that point. And then over here, what's kind of interesting and fun is some old leeks. At this point, I don't think could harvest, but I think they would be fairly tough. And so what I'm more interested in is these seed heads will turn into these little like pom-poms in the garden, which a lot of people will grow decorative alliums for this reason, but it'll create my own little decorative allium patch, but it'll really just be old leeks that have gone to seed. A couple more strawberry pots, of course. And this is also a kale, another purple kale that is, both of these here are purple kales that are from last year that I've just kept growing. And then we've got a monster size raw flower here. Along this side here, we've got a pot of saplogosis, hasn't bloomed yet. A pot here of some asters with some allium, also not really blooming yet. And then another pot here with some petunias. Can't see it from there, but I'll give you a close-up. I've got a columbine tucked back in here, so a nice yellow columbine, and then there are some sugar snap peas growing back on this trellis back over here. Okay, now let's come along here. Okay, so over here, framed in by the lavender here, and then there's a snapdragon here. Is overwintered from last year. Hiding back there are 3 blueberry bushes. They're different kinds, so I think that they're designed to kind of provide blueberries at different times. And then here, this tall thing that hasn't flowered yet is actually a endive that has gone to seed. And I've seen it go to seed before, and it produces these beautiful little blue flowers, almost look like bachelor's buttons. So I'm letting it go to seed for that reason there. This is a card that is going to seed. I'm not intentionally letting it go to seed. Here, I'm just pulled it yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull it. My reason, I let things go to seed, see how they turn out. Sometimes I think that some of the vegetables that go to seed actually look pretty nice in the cottage garden style here. But also the reason that I would pull this here is not just for the sake of pulling it, but because I need more space. So I've got summer crops that I still want to put in, and so I'm going to pull this out so that I'll have a little more space in there. Over here, I've got the calendula. So they're just kind of a smaller flower variety of calendula there. And then hiding here right behind the lavender is a pot that's got some carnations around it and a large white marigold that will kind of probably get about this high and produce a nice white flower at the top. All right, well, let's keep going this way. Well, down here, I've got several spurs surrounded by flowers in pots. I went over my plantings on those in a prior video. They're all different ones, and I'll know what they are once they start fruiting. And so as we come farther down here, what we have here is another Thuja green giant pot, because I wasn't committing to the location. I think this probably is a good location. I mean, the goal would be to grow things vertically to kind of frame in the garden on this side so that there's more privacy to the garden. It doesn't feel as much like it's kind of in a neighborhood surrounded by houses. That would be the dream anyway. We can get there with over time. And then here is an apple tree. It is a Honeycrisp apple tree. I actually have some older apple trees that are like 15 years old over there, and all of my apple trees in the garden this year are not fruiting. So something happened in my garden that prevented them from fruiting. I don't know if it was a cold snap that killed the flowers or what exactly that was, but fortunately it was the case. Down here below the Thuja green giant is a red cabbage it'll grow pretty big. And then a newer purple kale. Then I've got some Shasta daisies in the background there, and of course more strawberry pots here. Okay, so we're gonna go down this way. We just came from back there. We came up this way on this path, and now we're gonna go down this way along this driveway, and then we will cut back over to here and go up the driveway on that side and back that way, just to orient you for a minute there. So what do we have here? Well, in the background framing what's up here is the lavenders. So I've got 3 lavenders in pots, and I try to keep this cut back. Then in the season, it shoots the lavender kind of stems out, and it's getting ready to flower here, and it's gonna smell wonderful. It's gonna attract pollinators. It'll be great here. But in front of that here, we saw from the other side when we were doing the path, the peppers that were here, the quinoa that's over there. So the only 2 things I have to show you here are, got a green pot here with a dahlia that will kind of grow up and probably bloom maybe in July, more likely August. And then I've got some lobelia there in the pot with it. Here I've got a pepper. At this point I don't know which kind it is, but looking at it right now, I think it's a shishito, because there is a pepper on it right now. It could be a padron, but I think this one is a shishito here. And that was just planted actually a couple days ago there in this pot. So it was already kind of forming a pepper before it even got planted. So it's going. Starting over here on the west wall, you've got Maddie's watering can. And then we have, here is the Nicotiana. This is the Bronze Queen Nicotiana. I think it will get high or so. I've got some calendula in the pot around it here. This is here temporarily squishing hyssop herb that is kind of planted as a perennial here along in the wall itself. This is here temporarily. These are just the sunflowers that are hardening off out here in that spot. I ran out of spots near the hose where I was keeping all the other things, and so I just started putting stuff out here. I'm just trying to keep them close in the driveway where I can get to them in water. I need a better like hardening off station. That I'm thinking maybe racks or something with, but it would need to be quite big because I've got lots and lots of trays of things this time of year as I'm planting things out. But it'd be cool to have a hardening off station that allows me to kind of have all my plants out where they can get some sun, they can harden off, but they are otherwise out of the way and not, they're otherwise out of the way in terms of in the garden itself before they're ready to be planted. Here's another pepper. Again, I don't at this point remember which kind I planted here, but you will know when it fruits. And then I've got this surrounded by some saplogosis that are in here. And some more strawberry pots. This is actually just holding a couple of hood strawberry plants that failed, that they didn't go this year for some reason. So hopefully maybe they're still alive and they'll come back next year. I don't know, but I'm gonna take them out of here and put them in like a black nursery pot and then tuck them away somewhere out of the way, and they will I'll be able to reuse this pot, but then I can bring them back out next year and see if they work. This is also a hood, so some of my hoods are doing okay. I've got a strawberry pot there with a hood. And then this is another pepper. Again, don't know what variety it is at this point. We'll find out soon. But I've got some nasturtiums in here. These are, say they're black nasturtiums, but really I think that really means it's a dark purple color. Now buried into the wall here, or embedded into the wall, are some succulents here. So these are actually things I transplanted from the old garden. The old garden had like a succulent area in a kind of a rocky area. And so I just took some of those and I just stuck it in the cracks here, and it's just multiplied from there. Maddie's kind of helped out because she goes around like trimming the succulents and then throwing the roots in different places. She doesn't really know what she's doing, but it has actually resulted in, I think, some things spreading out and sprouting as well, which is just fine. I like the look of that. And then this is more of that hyssop herb. We'll put up stems that produce flowers later in the season. So yeah, I probably have more of this than I need. It gets kind of bushy and out of control. So this part of the west wall, I've got a pot here that has what was called a pink jasmine. Actually, there is a tag on it right here. So it just calls it a jasmine. It's not something I had seen before. It's not like the jasmine, the star jasmine that I have over there. There's some bloom. Let me see if oh, it does smell good. Yeah, it does smell like the jasmine that I have over there. It might be the hyssop here actually has quite a strong scent to it as well. So it might be they're conflicting with each other. It actually was a potted plant that came, my wife went to like an event, a banquet, where they had these in little pots of centerpieces, and when the banquet was over, they were telling people to take them home. So, you know, people always bring me, they see I garden a lot, so they'll bring me plants. You may have similar issues in your garden, and you know, and it's a nice gesture, but sometimes people bring all this stuff and then it's like, oh man, I'm already overgrowing for the space that I have, and I haven't figured out where to put everything, and now I got this extra thing I got to figure out where to put somewhere. But this is actually pretty cool. I like having it. So got it into a pot, and here we go. We got ready. We'll see where it goes. This has some little flowers on it. This is a second try at the experiment of putting quinoa, trying to put a quinoa stand of quinoa in a pot. So I'm doing it again in this pot here. Got some quinoa here. They're a little bit leggy, so hopefully we'll see how they go. And then another kind of nasturtium here around it. In this little black pot, I've got some, I thought that maybe it was a dahlia, but actually these are asters. So I've got several asters here, and then I've got in the front here some sweet alyssum. And then in this pot here, I've got some marigolds. I think these are probably the larger marigolds. I don't remember, they may be the yellow ones, so the big Cracker Jack yellow marigolds. And then over here, I've got a dahlia with some petunias around it here. And then I've got another hardening off using the wall for another hardening off tray. So this here is yet a different sedum. This is another one that my 3-year-old daughter, Maddie, likes to come along and trim this. She thinks that's her job, is to trim it back. So she comes along and trims it with her little plastic scissors. And occasionally you find piles of this sitting around various places in the garden or on the driveway where she's trimmed it and then thrown it somewhere. But that's fine. It grows pretty profusely and been kind of transplanted in and around different places in the wall here. Okay, so over here we've got another pot here with some nasturtiums in the front here. I'm not sure what I intended to have planted back here, but whatever it was dead. Videos showing what I was planting in each of these pots, so we could probably figure it out together by going back and looking at the prior video. I've got a painted bucket here with Jimmy Nardello peppers in there. I know it is because Jimmy Nardello is kind of scratched in chalk here. This bucket was an experiment I'm trying. I like this idea of painting the buckets with chalkboard paint essentially, so then you can draw on the buckets with chalk. The only problem is I don't have beautiful writing, but if I had beautiful writing, this would even be better or more cooler if I could do some beautiful writing and some work and stuff on them. I think what I might do is get some stencils and things. That way I can draw things with chalk on there that actually look nice when I create buckets like this. But yeah, I thought it was a fun idea. This is a sedum. Again, it's something I transplanted over from the other garden, from the rock garden area there, and just kind of put it into the rock wall here, and it's done well. This is a straw flower that overwintered from last year actually in this pot. It's a different color than all the other straw flowers that you saw earlier, so that makes it kind of nice. It's kind of I think this might have been a silver, I don't remember what it was called, silvery something maybe. And then down here, got a shishito pepper here. I know it's a shishito because there's a pepper on it and I can kind of see how it's fruiting now. And then I've got some marigolds around the outside, which I think are probably, or these would be French marigolds that were put around the outside here. And then I've got a dahlia that is getting nice. This is the biggest dahlia I have in the garden so far. There's some sweet alyssum around the edges there. And then the second of my 3 lavender that are in pots around the garden. Actually, I've got 4 lavender actually, now that I think about it, because 1, 2, 3, yeah, I've got 4. So it's the second of 4 lavender that I have in pots around the garden, finishing out the west wall here. So that's it for the west wall. I'm actually going to show you something I have over here just for fun, but it's not really part of the garden per se. Just wanted to show you this for fun. There's I have over here. It's kind of like in this corner right before this is the entry to the garage here. So we've come all the way down the driveway. We're at the end of the west wall here. And what I have set up over here, these are actually old Pinot wine barrels. And then there's a old whiskey barrel there. And I've just got some old tabletop set up on top of there here. Not technically part of the garden, but this is my bucket workshop. So this is where I'm making buckets out of old Tillamook ice cream buckets. And here I have one that was made last year where I didn't quite get the whole thing. I didn't get the paint job right, so it's been chipping. And I'm doing some different things this year in terms of how I clean the bucket ahead of time and how I time it and all that sort of thing to try to get a better job of the paint so that it's more durable and lasts and looks better in the garden. So I'm actually gonna try to refurbish this one a little bit, put some more dirt in it. And then over there, that's just arbitrary because what I was mentioning before, I've run out of spaces for all my hardening off trays. So I'm just stucking them anywhere there's a flat surface around this garden driveway that is nearby water, but otherwise out of the way, I'm throwing a tray. So that's a tray of, if you don't know what that is, that's corn. That's a tray of corn that is hardening off before it goes planted out somewhere in the garden in a little while. All right, yeah, just thought I would share my bucket workshop area so you had a complete sense of what's going on in this driveway garden. We are going to turn all the way around that direction. And that way we'll start on the east side wall and you'll see the the big east side retaining walls project that's underway to try to make that east side more usable. But some of that, the first level of the east side wall is in place, and you'll see over there that I've got all the plants lined up there, and that's been my primary hardening off area for trays of plants. And it goes all the way up, and it's also where the container row is that I have all the tomatoes planted that you may have seen in a more recent video. So we're gonna turn around, we'll look at all that, and then keep going around the garden from there. So this is where we left off at the bucket painting workshop, and I just wanted to kind of do a 180 here to orient you as to where things are. So as we go, this is the garage as we move this way. So we were just looking previously at the west side of the driveway, and now that goes into the garage, and now we're looking down at the into the garage, and this is where the magic happens. Right here on this wall of the garage is where the racks are with lights earlier in the season. And right now I actually don't have anything in there. I could have some more stuff going in there later if I do some succession rounds. I actually didn't use as many of these. Normally I only used only used 2 banks of the shelving. I didn't use all the shelving, and I've got my painting supplies on the far end here, closer to the bucket workshop for painting buckets actually. So maybe next year I will use a lot more of it because I'll have more garden that I'm preparing for. But this year, just kind of trying to keep it conservative with how much I was growing seeds, given how much space or lack thereof I had, that I didn't end up using all of that space. We're gonna swing around here to the east. So as we kind of turn around from the west side of the garage to here, the east side of the garage, and now you can see I have a little office east side of the garage, kind of carved into the side of the hill because the house is on a slope. So as you can see there, that's the deck above us. And so I've got my office there with my office door. And then I've got this is my sink, where my cleanup area where I can clean up after a day of gardening, but also it also has become I have the racks on the side there. It's become the veggie washing station. So I can wash and package veggies. And then over here is just a workbench area that I've created over there. So what you see there is a bunch of kind of random tools that I have down here because it's easier to access them from down here than the potting bench. So it's like almost a secondary potting bench, but it's really because I'm right next to the water hose. This is the main hose that I use to water the entire garden. Since the garden is formed around the driveway, I can just walk around the entire driveway garden with this really long, I think it's 100-foot hose on the retractable thing there. And then that will cover my needs for the most part. You use watering cans. You know, sometimes if I'm getting to a far point in the garden, it's easier to just use a watering can than to pull out the whole hose kind of thing. But this is also on this east side here, this first tier wall has been built out. So you can see what I mean by the first tier wall. This goes all the way up the side of the driveway. And then that's also the container row that I've talked about in previous videos where I've planted my tomatoes. I pretty much have that first tier wall done, but what you see behind it is the second tier wall, which is what I'm working on now. And then there'll be yet a third tier wall before you get to the path that's up there that we'll go look at that path. And so that's quite the project. But the ideal is that once that's done, I'll have a lot more growing space here on that east side. I'll have 2 long 30 to 45 foot beds I can plant in there, or it could just be flat spaces that I can put down more containers on, kind of thing. It may ultimately prove to be the best way to do it. But in any case, that's the goal, is to create more growing space, to terrace that out, get those walls in there, and then be able to have more growing space there. Having this workbench here is super helpful because we're right next to the garage. And so it allows me to bring my seedling trays from out of the garage to over here, and I can just water them right there. If they need to go back in the garage, I can water them there, take them back into the garage, or I can start them here and then I can then move them over to here. This area right here where I've got all these plants set up was thought to be my hardening off area. It's not nearly large enough for a hardening off area though. This area was designed to be my hardening off area, but as you can see, it's not nearly large enough. And the things that I have hardening off in here are peppers, tomatoes, eggplants. In the back, you can't see them easily from there. And then I've got things, because I exceeded this area, I've still got things hardening off all the way back here. Marigolds and asters and calendula and all kinds of flowers, cosmos and straw flowers and basil. Got summer squash and winter squash, pumpkins, that sort of thing, beans. So yeah, I've got it all out here right now. As you saw, the garage doesn't have anything in it right now. So everything is out here. Hardening off is probably the wrong term because they've been out here for a while now. So everything is quote unquote hardened off. They're holding. It's a holding area. They're in holding, waiting for me to find the right space for them and have the time to get out here and plant them, which takes a little longer than it might otherwise, because when I'm planting, I'm sharing with you. So turning the camera on and dealing with all of that and then editing all of that together afterwards adds to the gardening time. It's something I enjoy, so I'm not complaining. I enjoy sharing this with you all, and I enjoy doing the gardening. And it's, if you can't share it with anyone, then at some point it's like, well, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody sees it, does it matter, right? Is that the right analogy? But in any case, yeah, it feels like I have to be able to share it somehow in order to kind of complete the whole activity, so to speak. Not that YouTube and what I'm doing here is the only way to share it, but certainly is one way. Okay, and then as we progress down here, kind of hiding down here is whiskey barrel with my potatoes planted in it. So I'm not growing a ton of potatoes, just for fun demonstration purposes. And then I've got tomatoes lined up along here that we are growing. So let's move down this way and see kind of what else I have along this first level of the driveway. Well, I've got a continuation of my tomato plants all the way down there. Of course, there's an artichoke at the end there. They've got some Shasta daisies sitting in smaller containers ready to be planted out somewhere else. So those are supposed to be temporary containers, although they may be temporary for the whole season at this rate. I've got some more beans. Over here, I've got a bunch of a winter squash. Here, I was calling it hardening off earlier, but I should call it holding. In the holding zone, I've got licata and butternut squash kind of in the holding zone there. And then I've got up on that second level, I've got peppers, I've got summer squash, I've got a yellow summer squash and a black beauty zucchini over there. And in between these plantings here, I've got this little box where I'm growing some flax for fun, and I'm bordered that with some sweet alyssum. And as we round the corner on the end, can't really see it from there, but I'll bring the close-up around so you can see it. I've got my corn also holding in a holding spot waiting to be planted out. So that kind of rounds out everything that's going on this east driveway space. You may have seen in prior video discussions, I talked about these containers here are here just for the season because it's taking up some of the driveway, intended space for driveway, and will make things more maneuverable here if I can get these off the driveway eventually. And I want to get them off the driveway because essentially I want to have a garden bed just right behind this wall. Once this east side project that I've been working on is done, I'll have a garden bed back there. And in order to reach it well, I don't want these things in my way. I want to be able to get right up next to the wall and reach over to get into the garden bed. So that's the dream. Well, let's go around the corner and we'll head over to an area that you've probably seen a lot in my prior videos. The cherry tree garden was the first area that I kind of had set up this season. So it's where I've got a lot of stuff going on. And then we'll walk up the west path back towards the potting bench, which is back that direction. By the way, in terms of, we were on the west side, we're now looking on the east side. So this is south facing here and then north facing that way. So we get really good, south facing sun throughout this driveway garden. That's one thing that's not, I can complain about the fact that there's not as much space here and I'm dealing between a driveway and I'm having to do this project to terrace the hill. But the cool thing is, man, we do get a lot of great sun here. So that's certainly helpful for growing lots of flowers and lots of veg and flowers. All right, let's head that way. Okay, so we're leaving kind of the east driveway, coming over to the cherry tree here, and we'll kind of rotate around so you can see but this is essentially the driveway entrance to the home, and the garage down there that we were looking at earlier. So this here is a stand of Jerusalem artichoke, sometimes called sunchokes. Planted a few years ago, it kind of spread itself out. There's always a warning with these that they can spread vigorously. I've never seen them, they haven't really spread vigorously. They've kind of just been here on the corner, and you know, they do spread out a little bit, but they come back every year. They produce really nice kind of flowers, and the tubers are edible, although people report there could be gastrointestinal trouble with them if you're not used to them, and different ways to fix it, to cook them in order to make it less so that way. I would characterize it as a survival food. I don't really find it particularly good eating, so tried it once many years ago and was like, okay, that's cool that I have it available, but I don't have a reason to eat it regularly. I'm just growing it as an ornamental here. I call this corner the cherry tree garden because this is a cherry tree. It's been here for a good 20 years or so. Cut it back at various times. My intent was to keep it from growing really tall, because these can get fairly tall and have a huge canopy. I didn't want a huge canopy over the garden here that we're trying to grow. It requires a certain amount of sun. So I keep it trimmed back also so that the cherries are reachable. I'm gonna blame somebody that wasn't me. When I wasn't gardening for a few years, when I wasn't really gardening here, but we owned the house, we had the typical landscaping that would come over and kind of blow things off the path and do some weed whacking. And I think somebody opened up the base of the tree with a weed whacker, and it's had some disease going on ever since. So as you go around the tree, you'll probably see that. You'll see kind of how the center of the tree looks hollowed out. Nevertheless, this side of the tree still looks very healthy. The other side of the tree is growing, but it actually has a ton of aphid damage on it this year. It had just a ton of aphids. I'm actually okay with that, because if the aphids are attacking that, I've seen this happen with this tree in particular before, where some years it'll just get all this aphid activity going on. And the thing is, if all the aphids go there, what happens, the next thing that happens, and I started to see it, is that the ladybugs arrive. And that all happens before my main vegetable garden comes into place. So we have fava beans along here. They've swollen up quite a bit, but they're not all ready. I want to wait till they're all ready before I harvest them. I don't want to harvest them in stages, because once I harvest the fava beans, not only will it be some fun for my 3-year-old Maddie and I to kind of sit down and unpack those fava beans, but it will also be an opportunity to clear this area out and give me more room for those summer crops that I have sitting and holding, or veggies that I have sitting and holding. So it's coming within the next week, I think. I've got some other things in holding down here. These are various veggies, really. It's brassicas, so cabbage, broccolis, and call the dino kale here. Okay, so the way we're gonna approach this going forward, I'm gonna take you through what I call the Maddie path. It's a path back here between the tree and the 3 stock tanks, so you can kind of see what's going on back here. And then I will bring you back out and around this way to look at the cherry tree garden area from that side, because that's where the west path is for the garden. And then we'll go up that west path and all the way to the last part of our tour, up down the west path, the potting bench area. So I've got a little path in here, call it the Maddie path, or the secret path, or Maddie's, I think Maddie likes it when I call it Maddie's secret path. And yeah, it's not easy to get the camera in here, so I'll kind of tell you about it from here, and then I'll bring the camera in for close-ups without me in the shot or in the frame. But I've got 3 stock tanks here, and this one here has got some snap peas and then some spinach. The spinach I quit harvesting weeks ago, and it's just kind of bolting or growing up there. This stuff could still be good to eat. Yeah, tastes like spinach. It's not super bitter or anything like that. Over here, the really tall ones ended up being the shelling peas, and I'm just eating them in the garden because it's too much work to like go out and shell peas for the kitchen. and I don't grow enough to really make that a worthwhile activity. I thought, I didn't realize I grew the shelling peas here, so it's kind of in the middle of where my sugar snap peas are. So sometimes I have to test them out and chew on the pea to see if, is it a sugar snap or is it a shelling pea? My sugar snap peas have stopped performing in the last week. We really haven't gotten, maybe one here or there, but I'm hoping maybe we'll get some more flowers and we'll get some more performance of them before the season's totally done here. As we walk this way here, then we've got some bok choys in here. I've got some open space in here that I can maybe put a zucchini or something is what I'm thinking. Some more sugar snap peas in here. And then all the way back here, bok choy, lettuce, sugar snap peas. I do have if I'm looking over on this side here, right here is the big rhubarb that, I'm harvesting like once a week, and it still keeps putting out these massive leaves that shade everything around it. And we're looking at the back side of a cabbage and kale. We'll see all of this stuff from the other side. Probably the thing that's kind of impressive that you can't see as easy from that other side is this massive lettuce that's sitting back here. A huge lettuce head that we need to go ahead and harvest, I think. All right, well, that is the secret pathway there. This is the other hitting the cherry tree bed from the other side. There's the cherry tree there. This white pot I mentioned earlier has got a dahlia you can't see yet in it, a pepper. It's got some petunias around here that I think are going to look great. Down here, I don't know if you can see that from there, but I've got blue wheat. So these wheat tops will turn blue and designed to be a decorative and ornamental, not an edible there. And over here, this is kind of the pride of the garden right now. This is a purple cabbage or a red cabbage, and so yeah, it's looking good. And then next to it is a big dino kale there that's had some massive caterpillar damage here. But I've got some caterpillar damage here and there. I'm controlling caterpillars as much as I can. They're not ruining the garden, but they're here. I've got some things out in storage here. These are penstemon flowers that I need to find a more permanent home for. And then I've got some dahlia bulbs just sitting to basically sprout. And I've got a couple of them that have sprouted here, but most of them have not sprouted. And I don't know if it's getting late, so maybe I don't know if that's considered bad news that they haven't sprouted yet because it's been a few weeks now that they've been in there, or if I just need to give it a little more time. Along this side here, this is kind of talking more about as we are doing this east path here, but this east path which takes us down that way towards the potting bench area. I've got strawberries in pots. I've got some Shasta daisies. I got an echinacea that hasn't bloomed yet, but it's on its way. And I've got a golden lingstrium. I'm not sure how to say that bush, kind of in a pot there, and more strawberries. So lots of strawberries in pots around here. I'm trying to grow as many as I can fit in. I've decorated the outside of this cherry tree bed with some pansies. Yeah, that's what we have in this area here. Well, as we come back this way towards the potting bench down this east path, we're east of the driveway. There is a railing for the stairs here. It's blocked by all the pots that I have, but it's also trellising a grape plant that I've had here for over a decade. And I think it was the Red Flame. It has seeds in it. So if that one has seeds in it, then I think that's what it was. Kind of a common kind of backyard garden grape that's grown around here, not specifically used for wine or anything like that. Some years it comes on, some years it doesn't. It comes on fairly late. It doesn't, usually I don't see the grapes until mid to late September. And so depending on what's going on with the rains and stuff, it may come on right before things just rain it out, or you got to get it just at the right time, really. I don't have like an extended grape season. I remember growing up, which I was in when I was in high school. I was in Oregon, And I remember growing up in my dad's garden had a big grape arbor, and the grapes came on there in midsummer or so. And I feel like, but maybe my memory of youth is just wrong, but I felt like they came on maybe late summer. But I had some of the summer break before going back to school that we would play in and around that grape arbor, pick the grapes and eat them and all that sort of thing. So anyway, along the wall here, I just have more trays of these dahlia bulbs that I've carried over from the prior year, hoping they'd sprout. And again, a couple have sprouted here and there, but not all of them. Anchoring this point here is this artichoke, which I planted this year. So this is a new artichoke that was grown from seed that started in January of this year and is now growing in this pot. Got some lobelia in there. I've got these Shasta daisies and that I've kind of planted around here, and then I'm holding some more plants over here. Well, this is what I was referring to, the Espalier apple trees that need a trim over here. Again, they've been here for 15 years. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 apple trees here, and then on the far end, as we round the corner, I have a fig tree that I also bred an Espalier over here in in a similar fashion. What you see over here on top of the whiskey barrel is some of the blue wheat that's here. It hasn't thrown up a wheat. There we go. It's got a little bit of a wheat thing there. I've got some more of the Shasta daisies here. There's a Princeton plant in the back there. And then I've got some lilies kind of hanging out back here. They're in a pot there. Over here, I've got just a blue pot at the bottom there with a dahlia and some cosmos. And then along here is the final row of pots of strawberries. Trying to get as many strawberries as we can this year. That's my favorite berry of all. Well, I feel like this pot here is like the jewel of the garden. It's blown out. It's the pot underneath it looks kind of rustic. I love the color of this here. I've got a little blue lilies that I grew from seed, purplish lilies, I should say, I grew from seed. There, basically, what I have all along here as we go down is a stack of bricks. It almost looks like a half brick wall, but it's not a wall put in place with mortar or anything. What happened was that the old garden that I moved to the driveway garden from, that old garden that you hear me reference sometimes, where I had the opportunity to grow big, had a greenhouse, and the greenhouse was somewhat expensive. And underneath it, we had laid down a really nice red brick pavement base floor to that greenhouse, and took a lot of time to do it and did it really well. And so it was kind of bittersweet to but I wanted to save that greenhouse. So I did save the parts of that greenhouse and have them kind of stored away in hopes that I can figure out a way to use it in the future. Because the people acquiring that, I sold that property. The people acquiring that property made it clear they were going to just tear it down anyway. They didn't care, so they were happy for me to just take it. So I took down the greenhouse, and then it suddenly occurred to me after I took down the greenhouse of, hey, I should, I have a lot of investment in all these pavers for that. It's about 10 by 20, so it's like 200 square feet of pavers of these red bricks. So I grabbed all of those. I did use them for pavers for the potting bench area, which you'll see later, but I just had way more than could even fit that area. So I just stacked them here, and initially as a holding spot, but it essentially became this kind of like decorative half brick wall. And then I was able to put all these pots on top of it. So I'm really enjoying that. And so I get to try out kind of different things and flowers along here as we do this. Down here, I have it's the only, it's one of a couple of gladiolas that I've got into the ground. I have a bunch of gladiolas in little pots that need to go into the ground still. And at this point, it might be too late, but we'll see if we'll give it a try. And then I have one little plant of status. This was something I planted from seed Last year it survived over winter in a little pot, so I still had it this year. I was like, where am I going to put it? So I said I'll keep it a prime location right there. Okay, and then down here, as I mentioned, and when we were talking about this just a minute ago, I've got my apple trees until I get to the big fig tree, which is right over here. And there's our fig tree there. So I'm kind of going back and forth here, but yeah, back over here to the wall here, I've got some pansies, I've got a snapdragon here, I've got some alyssum, I've got a blank space in the wall that I need to fill. I'm waiting to kind of put something else there, but that's what's happening here. Let me bring you farther down. Well, this area is starting to look a little bit like a jungle, and I need to come in here and do some trimming back. I just did some trimming back like a week ago. Beside me here is the last of my 4 lavender. It's just here for holding, and it's looking a little rough. I haven't taken care of this one like I have the others because it hasn't been in plain view. What this is here is, and I don't think our neighbor's actually growing it. This is a trumpet. I think I call it a trumpet flower. It's a very vigorous vine. It's so vigorous it'll like tear down the whole fence, and it grows enormously. I've always kept it trimmed back over the years. It's kind of grown into the fence. I think what happened was that they got planted, got replaced. That isn't kind of the primary thing that they had on their side anymore, but the roots and everything of it are basically in the fence. And so it still comes back every year and then grows over. I actually don't mind it. I actually like it in terms of the look. Other than the way it's destructive to the fence is unfortunate, and the fact that it's very vigorous and will spread everywhere if you're not careful. I had the seed pods were dropping over here, and I had roots of this growing deeply. I had to like really pull them out over here on this side area that's now under construction. But anyway, this will produce, the reason I call it a trumpet flower, because I don't know the exact name, but it'll produce like a nice red flower that looks like a trumpet on it. And later this season when it flowers, I'll show you. And then when it's done flowering, it produces like a bean pod that's this long. Not the kind of bean you would eat, but it kind of looks like a pod with seeds in it. Anyway, underneath that here, what I have here, I've got more of my flowers on my brick wall here. Got some strawberries, some pansies, some carnations, a delphinium, which is kind of growing up in wild there. I saw some white, it's got some white flowers that are buried in there actually. But the delphinium that is the star of the delphiniums in this garden, because I don't have any growing and blooming, is right here. I've got some blue delphiniums growing here just underneath the strawberry that's right here. Very delicate, but very fun. I like the look of this particular kind of flower here. And of course, I mentioned earlier, here's the fig. I haven't quite figured out, we've had this fig for about 15 years. It's nice and thick, but I've never quite figured out when the figs are ready. I mean, these things have been on the branches for, a month and a half now. And, then it seems like they just disappear. Like I never get to eat them. They just kind of disappear. And I've been figuring lately that maybe it's the squirrels that are getting them, or the birds or somebody. They just kind of disappear. And then a new round comes in kind of late in the year. And one year we were lucky that new round matured before it got too cold here, and so we had figs in the late fall. But most of the time that new round just can't mature in time before the cold kills everything. So I don't, even though it looks nice and big and vigorous, you see figs in the vine here. I actually don't harvest. I haven't been able to harvest a lot of figs from this over the years. But I mean, it's such a big, nice established tree. I just wanted to keep it around for now. We're coming to the end of the east path and getting into the potting bench where we'll finish our tour. Right here, real quick, I've got a pepper here. I'm going to be cutting back this vine here so that this will be getting more sun. I've got, I was experimenting with the idea of getting these kind of different kinds of interesting mugs that I could drill a hole in the bottom of to create drainage and get them from from a dollar store or a Goodwill or something like that. I only did it once though. And but I had a snapdragon in here. It was flowering. It's now gone to seed, but it works. It works nicely there. Tucked in back here for holding, I've got some additional perennials. I've got some penstemon. I've got, this looks like it might be an echinacea actually. I've got some Shasta daisies there. And then I've got these a whole bunch of these gladiola bulbs that I need to get out somewhere if I want any gladiola flowers from them. They're just sitting there and building right now. And then back over here, I've got dahlia here, pepper, and some petunias. Again, need to kind of trim this back a little bit, not only to give myself more light here, but also as I walk through here, this is starting to hit me in the head. And then back over here, in this pot, we've got a dahlia, pepper, and some calendula and some cosmos in the back. And then what you see here is just more holding area. So I've got more perennials and holdings, even more Shasta daisies. I need to give some Shasta daisies away to people. Even more Shasta daisies here. And then I've got these trays of dahlia bulbs that are waiting to sprout. Hopefully, cross our fingers that that's possible. Well, I thought I would end our tour here, the potting bench area. This was a project that I did late December into January. I built this out, and yeah, it was pretty exciting. The first thing was the property is sloped, so the neighbor's property over here is has a higher elevation than our property here, and it just keeps going down this way. And so I put in a retaining wall underneath here, and then I built this essentially like this back wall, so to speak, there, and then put these posts in here. I had previously had like a big garden bed here, raised garden bed here that I had to take out. So I dug out the holes, put in these posts and concrete, all that kind of thing, and built this, and then built the roof structure over that, just so that I could be out here when it's raining, and this would be a place to hang out when it's raining. It rains a lot in Oregon. A lot of times it's just kind of a drizzle or something that's not like blowing at you, so it can be raining and I can just be out here and still working on seedlings and things like that, which was my vision of what would be fun there. And so yeah, it gave me this big long space here. Otherwise, this whole space on this east side of the house was unused. There was no walkway here to the front, and there was no this was just a hillside that came from where the neighbor's grate is, just kind of gradually came its way down until it kind of came down to kind of a little bit of a narrow path between the house and that hillside. So I had to dig all that out, get all that out of the way, that hillside essentially, in order to create this. You can see I put the bricks that I was talking about that I had removed from the greenhouse floor of the old garden. I put them down here. It looks okay. It's fun. It's very functional. I wish I didn't really spend the time fully leveling it because I was kind of putting it in place, working around it, and then my idea was I was going to take it up piece by piece, re-level it, and then put in the what they call it, the plyometric sand, but it's kind of interlocking sand that helps pavers like that stay together. I never did that because once I got it down and I started using it, I just got too busy using it, and it was functional enough that I haven't done it. So that's a project in the future, as I could go through here and re-level it off. And actually, as it gets closer to the house here, it's not really kind of in place. It's kind of uneven and just kind of sitting over. So that's something that I can work on for later. Another project for another time. Plenty of stuff to do in the garden this year. Don't need to worry about that. But after I built the retaining wall, I then built this bench here. Basically goes over the top of that retaining wall, and then it uses kind of the flat surface that the retaining wall created underneath there as a shelf space essentially. So I've created a shelf under there which I basically just filled that with gravel, so that it's just gravel and dirt behind the retaining wall there. So there's no other construction back there. And so then I'm just storing trays, things that I don't mind if they get wet. They get wet, it doesn't matter. It's okay. I'm just storing trays and things back there, various supplies. And then here, this is I actually used the bench that was inside the greenhouse of the old garden. I was able to recycle it and basically put this frame around it. So that bench runs all the way, it's 20 feet long, so it goes from here all the way down to there. And I was able to run that entire bench here And then I put this frame around it, because one of the things that I never liked about that bench was it had this space in it, but I was always having to put stuff on top of it anyway. So I made it so that I could basically have a little shelf in here. So there is this, there is a compartment underneath these boards inside here that I could use. I haven't really found a use for it yet, but I could use it for more storage. Maybe I could use it to store potting soil, or maybe I could use it to store trays or something like that. So anyway, I'll think about it. What I have done is I've taken the boards out of certain sections of it and then put bins with potting soil in it. So that gives me that. And this is where you often see me in videos where I'm potting things at the potting bench. This is where this is where that magic is happening. Is this area over here. I had all these kind of old, these were actually old fixtures and things that came out of the house from that old garden that at one point we remodeled it, and it was a 100-year-old house, so it had some old fixtures and things that I saved, and so I saved those, and I'm using those as hangers and things here. And then of course you can see that I'm storing all my harvesting baskets, and baskets are always really helpful in the garden to have lots of baskets, so I just collect baskets over time. That's something that people are giving me things. It's like, give me a basket. I always love another basket. So I take these baskets, I'm just hanging them up here as a place to store them. Got little hooks up there. Old ranunculus, but I need to unpot and then reuse that pot in the garden here. This is my latest thing, which I'm pretty proud of. This is the Maddie bench, so that Maddie can, my 3-year-old daughter, can come along and she can do potting while I'm potting, or she can play and do other things. So I created little storage, hooks and little things for her to store all of her tools. So the idea was all of her garden tools and everything can be kept here, and then she can play on the top of this as her bench. But actually inside here is a sandbox. So I got some play sand in there and some more sand toys in there, so she can mess around in there and she feels like it. And then over to the side here, I built a little sink. My first iteration of this, I over-engineered it. So I had like this kind of tub in here with a little faucet thing, and so the water was sitting in the tub, and you undid it, and then the water in the tub would go down into there, and then that water would eventually have to be replaced, right? That was the idea. And then I realized, oh, actually, these days you've got these very easily rechargeable little water pumps. This was one that's designed to go on top of those big water bottles that you maybe have in an office, or maybe some people have in their houses too around the country. We don't do that too often here in Portland, but you have these like big water bottles that dispense water, right? And so this thing screws on the top of one of those big water bottles, and then it pumps the water out, and you can pump your water that way really easily. So I got one of these, very cheap. It's like $6 or something, right? So I was like, I over-engineered this whole thing, and I have a really cool electric option that's easy. And so I just put a tub of water underneath the sink here, and put this little gadget there, and it just charges like a USB charger. So I've got some power out here that I charge it every other day or so, or once a week, just to make sure that Maddie has water, has her sink will operate, so she can come over here and she knows how to turn it on and off, and she turns it on, and I remind her to turn it off so that she doesn't run out of battery and too soon, and that kind of thing. So yeah, this was a fun piece, and the idea was that we'd get to be working together here. I could watch her doing her thing while I'm potting up here, which I think will serve me well in the coming year, at least, if not at least a couple years, hopefully. So yeah, that's it. The potting bench. As I've got some shelves here. I'm still kind of, it's a little bit messy because it's an actual potting bench in operation. And then I've got more stuff down there. But otherwise, I'd say thank you for joining me for this complete garden tour. It took longer than I thought it would to get all the way around such a small garden.